And first item, we will approve the minutes from 3/22 meeting. Everyone should have a copy of the meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Like a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hands. Okay,
We have a quorum, right? We have enough.
we do. We have 5. And
Oh, right, 'cause
Melissa
Melissa-
Massardo, can you say approve? Yes, you agree to approve?
Sorry, I was on mute. Approve.
All right, I'd like to start just giving Catherine a moment to chime in. I know that she had seen the presentation from Judy Crocker on Safe Routes to School. So if you had any comments before we discuss it openly, please have at it.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, that presentation was very similar to the one that we saw back in June, but it was good, to have the refresher and to watch it again. The comments I wanted to make were, again, I spoke to Bob Kuna and, just asked him a few questions because, I know, just remembering from our meetings, what occurred after that, and then what was going on in the school. And I just wanted to say, Rick, I appreciated your comment saying that there were other things that were taking priority, because that indeed was the case. The way Bob was looking at it is, we completed the application, fairly quickly to, try and move forward with it. And then he knew there was a good, hiatus of 7 months or so before we could really approach and ask for any funding if we wanted to. So at that point, we were dealing with COVID and, are we going back to school? Are we hybrid or not hybrid? And, we didn't have enough bus drivers. And then even after school started, there weren't enough bus drivers. And it was just one thing after another that dominated, the meetings, that had it been a normal school year, which we haven't had the whole 2 years I've been as a school committee member. I think things would have probably been done quite differently. As far as, I've not been contacted by Judy yet since the last meeting. I think she said she was going to reach out to me. She has not reached out to me yet. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. Since that meeting in June, also, Bob and Martha have attended 2 WebEx conferences that they put on. So again, it's not as if it's been forgotten. It's just that they haven't gotten around to doing the survey yet. We will bring up the survey, or I'll bring it up at the next school committee meeting next week. And what we'll do is, suggest that we move forward with the survey that Judy had mentioned. She said it takes 2 minutes or whatever. I hope she'll reach out to me, or maybe someone can give me her contact information. I can reach out to her. We wondered if we could add some questions. Initially, she'd only sent sample questions to Bob. She had not sent this whole survey, so we have no idea what questions are on their survey. And we'd like to really take advantage of, the work that's already been done, and they seem to, obviously know what they're doing, but we do want to know if we can add, a question or two. One question we were thinking to add is, why do you drive your child to and from school? What's the reason for it? Because if you understand why, then it's easier to try and, as she says, you are the traffic, right?
Right.
So why do you feel it's necessary to cause the traffic? I know that at an elementary level, I don't know, and Melissa, you can probably speak more intelligently, and Jeremy, I'm not, maybe on what traffic patterns you're seeing at the elementary schools. I haven't seen too much myself lately because I haven't been over there in the mornings because I'm working, but I feel like just my memory, and when I do have an afternoon off, I think that more parents pick up and drive in the middle school range. And we're thinking, and again, just because we want to ask that question, is they're picking up, I think, in the afternoons because kids are trying to get them to after school activities, and the buses don't get them home in time to get them to those activities. But it'd be nice to know that that's a fact, right? So anyway, that's kind of the comments that I wanted to make at this point in terms of, the research I did after watching that. Again, apologies if anyone felt at any school committee meeting that they were dismissed in any way as far as not knowing what's going on. And there was a comment I think made that, the school committee members said, you don't have any kids in the school, you don't know what you're talking about. I apologize if anyone felt that way. No one should feel that way. You see what you see. And, we all experience what we experience. So again, I do want to apologize if anyone felt that way.
Well, thank you, Catherine. Judy did reach out to me, and I can certainly forward it to the committee. And I'll just read what she had said. Following up from Transportation Committee March meeting, Fox Hill Safe Routes to School will be conducting an arrival dismissal observation at the Fox Hill next week. This was sent to me March 31st, so I don't know if that happened. Maybe Melissa Masato.
It happened. Yep, it happened yesterday and today, as a matter of fact.
Okay, great. Memorial, he hadn't heard back from the principal. She hadn't heard back from the principal. I think, Jeremy, she was going to reach out to you and see if you could help with that, trying to move that along. I don't know if she got you.
I saw the email. From the way I read it, we were waiting on the principal to respond. I can
Okay.
follow up and see if I can generate a response.
Yeah, I think
I did talk to Judy yesterday, and she had an old principal email address.
Yes.
So she just reached out again, I think this week or last week. So that was she apologized for that. So hopefully we
it
get
was near
traction
the end
there.
of the last. Yeah, you're right. It was,
Okay,
at the end of last week, I believe that was corrected. It was going to Principal Dressler. So that has been corrected, and we're just waiting on a response. But I'll follow up.
okay, it seems like that's a great starting point. We're all on the same team, and I think sometimes wires get crossed in all this. I think if they can do the observations, I mean, that's totally hands off from us. We get that started. She's really looking for the commitment or from someone to become a Safe Routes to School Alliance partner. When we had the last meeting, I said, I don't know what the authority of this committee is to speak for the town. I certainly don't want to overstep my bounds, nor do I want to raise my hand and become the alliance partner for the town, because I really do think it takes someone who's really passionate about it, moving it forward. So these recommendations, and I'm taking this right off. I took a couple of screenshots from her presentation. So she was looking to have us become a Safe Routes to School Alliance partner, consider forming a Safe Routes to School subcommittee, and we can put these together as action items to debate. But I think, we're moving it forward, and Catherine, having you as a point now with the school committee to be able to, say, hey, they're conducting a couple of assessments at the schools, because when they do that, it helps give us a third party that can back up what we're asking. If you can get your kids on the school bus, please utilize the services that are there. And, she mentioned, and we talk about it all the time, you're not in traffic, you are traffic. And to find the reasons why people do it. I mean, some people are always going to do it because they want to have total control. But if we can just get a few more people, utilizing the buses or some other methods to get to school, I think it's a win for all of us.
And as Bob put it, whether there are 5 kids on the bus or 20 kids on the bus has to run anyway. We pay the fee, period.
Right.
And most of those kids, you're passing, it's not like we're going out of our way to pick anyone up. I mean, that, we're driving along that route, and, he was even saying that it's funny, like even back, I don't know how many ever years ago when he grew up in Burlington, but he said, people won't even walk their kids, down 2 blocks to the bus stop. They want the bus stop in front of their house. So it's changed a lot.
Yeah, it has changed. And, some of it's perceived dangers and some of it
Correct.
is real dangers. But, I think everyone's had kids at one point and understands the challenges there. So we certainly are cautious to be, overburdening. But I think that if we can get a few other people to just put the kids on the bus or have an evaluation done and say, hey, it would be better if it was laid out this way. It's a free program for us to take advantage of. And as part of just following up from the previous Transportation Committee's findings, to be able to move this one forward is a relatively light lift.
Right. And it's not, again, the evaluations too, and the research done, as far as, what would be a safe way to walk in or ride bikes or whatever, one concern or I don't want to say if it's a concern, but a challenge is, we may say, okay, we want to put a flashing light here, or we want to put something there, but we don't have control. It's on private property, or it's state-owned road or whatever. So, I was saying, let's try and do those things if we can, of course, but the focus, I think, is, trying to find a way to get more kids who live closer to the school to form that walking bus or the biking bus, so you have a group of kids and parents can feel safer, with their kids walking in as a group, not individually. And that concept I really like a lot. And I think that there's, you'll get buy-in that way. And again, I think that Fox Hill, Westwood, straight, flat sidewalk, that's a good place to start.
Right. What are the thoughts from any other committee members on where the alliance partnership or where the point of contact should be? I mean, does it fall strictly under the school committee, or should there be a subcommittee? And I think a lot of times if you get parents involved, it helps to understand the problem and helps to foster the solution. But I'd love to hear from other members of the committee and their thoughts.
Yeah, I I think it's honestly and openly, I think it's very difficult because um, the parents have a lot of the ownership of the decision making, and that's where you have to figure out how do you influence the change. So they probably want to have a voice, but this is also running through the state and through the schools. So I think we need both. And my experience in the private sector is how do you not get committees and speed up decision making? And so, how do you not create more layers of decision making? So I think we have to talk through if there is a group that's comprised of representatives of school committee and transportation and um, parents, how do we give them the authority to make decisions for the town without having to come to an agreement to set it to another committee to make an agreement to get it approved for budget to make an agreement? Because otherwise the turnaround time is just so long that people are going to disengage.
I agree. Melissa, any thoughts on this one? Melissa, aye. We'll
I
start
mean,
there.
oh, sorry.
Oops.
I totally agree with what Jeremy said. I think probably I think the transportation committee would be great, but if we're not going to be alive in perpetuity, that could die off depending on what happens at the end of our 1 year sort of term. I think that schools, central administration and the individual schools should be alliance partners. I think you might be able to pull in some parents through the PTOs. I think at least each of the elementary schools, I think, has a pretty decent PTO as well as the middle school. Um, so you might be able to get some partnership there where they may be looking to organize around specific things. If you find somebody within those groups who's passionate about it, they might be able to mobilize a little bit on the ground. But I agree. I agree with Jeremy, not adding too many layers of decision making that just slows everything down. And we can make recommendations, but we can't make final decisions. So it'd be great for us to be partners. But at the end of the day, we need the decision makers probably to be the partners.
All right, agreed. Melissa M., you started to weigh in, and I'm sorry, when I see the telephone, it's hard to see if you're raising your hand or going to talk, but you have comments to add?
Sorry, I'm almost home. I thought you were calling on me, but I mean, I feel like I am the point person already for Fox Hill. I mean, I'm happy to continue that if we want to continue with this pilot. I'm happy to be the champion, or I don't know what. I haven't looked, and I'm happy to talk to Judy about like what the specifics, like what actually needs to be the partner. Like, can we say like Fox Hill is the partner? or do we have to say like the district is the partner? That would be my only question, but I'm obviously happy to do it.
It's my understanding, and I'm not necessarily right on this, that they're looking for the town to be the alliance partner.
Okay.
And Catherine, maybe you know if the thoughts are that the school committee would be the point for the alliance partnership, and then we can discuss where it all go. And I think
Right.
part of this is going to roll back to our initial discussion. If we make a recommendation that there is a transportation administrator that needs to be, a position needs to be created, it would certainly fall under that realm with some, work with the school department.
Well, and again, I think it's just, what are the next steps? Again, we filled out the application. So, we need to do the survey, and then what, right? I mean, I realize, they'll write up the routes, the safe routes based on, the information they gain and whatnot. But it's, what's the next step? What's the next step? I think it's, one of those things where people need to know what the steps are to figure out the timing of it so that, we can put it on an agenda to discuss it at a school committee meeting and plan on it and try and hit that final goal that, okay, we can apply for funding in September and let's, say, okay, here, what month are we in now, right? We're in April. So we've got from April through September, we've got to figure out what we have to accomplish these steps to get here. And what are those steps? And I think that needs to be very clearly written out on her behalf, in order for us to figure out that alliance, because I mean, again, I don't think the school committee in general, I can't speak for myself, but I don't think anyone's opposed to this at all. I know there was some question, people were afraid that it was going to push people, that they were going to try and eliminate busing or buses or availability of buses. And that's absolutely not what the goal of this is. And that was a question that was asked at that school committee meeting back in June. And once that, those individuals were, confirmed that that's not the goal of this, it's more just trying to get people to walk more and, ride bikes and whatnot to cut back on the traffic. There's total buy-in. It just, like I said, we just need to understand all the steps so
Right.
we can hit that goal.
Going back to one of the last slides she had, and I just printed it out so I could remember for my own sake. The sustainable next steps that she had listed was, partner with all schools for the Safe Routes to School program. And that was done in August 2021 to do the application. Assign the Safe Routes to School program point person. And at that point, it was going to be Bob Puna, probably.
And he's happy to keep doing it,
But then it was identify school community needs, create a safe routes task force, and develop a strategic plan. I think if we start with having them do the assessments of the schools, just this is a no-brainer. We don't do anything; they do it. They make recommendations, and then they're happy to meet and get feedback from PTOs just to get the ball rolling, and for them to be the point person saying, no, we're not trying to take your buses away. This is a program to help, move traffic along, make the safe route to school, improve the process. And it's a federally and a state funded program that you should be taking advantage of because a lot of other communities are, and they've made some inroads. So it's, I think we got to break down that wall. It's not the us versus them, it's the us. And hopefully, as it moves forward, I think people will understand that.
Well, I'd like to see them observe the traffic at Marshall Simons too. I don't, I'm trying to find, I don't think we have a Marshall Simons parent in this group or, oh, you are. Ah, haha.
I am, although I will not, I won't step foot near the middle school during drop off or pickup. My kid rides the bus. If she misses the bus, she's on her own.
Well,
I'm just
I'm
saying,
happy to talk
someone to
about it.
be the champion though for Marshall Simons Middle School, for Judy to be able
Oh,
to
champion,
have
yeah.
a contact to come in and, work with the principal and observe the traffic there too. Cause I think, I'd like to see the middle school observed as well. Cause I feel like that's a huge bottleneck because of the two schools being there. And I
Yeah.
also, my gut feeling is that more kids are being dropped and picked up at a middle school age than an elementary age.
So, because of work schedules, my kids are both at Memorial and they go to before care. I live on Peach Orchard. So if I time my driving to before care wrong, I run into the teeth of that middle school mess.
Mhm.
And it throws my whole day off. So I actually have to bring my kids to before care earlier than I'd like to. They're usually the first kids there and they hang out alone for a little while till other kids get there because of that traffic. And I obviously, if I'm working from home and running errands, I run into it at pickup too. It can be pretty tough. There's a lot of cars. People start getting aggressive. They'd rather, take a left on Peach Orchard and cut me off and let me go straight, even though I'm not impeding them at all because I don't have a blinker. So I I don't have kids there. I'm happy to chime in, but I do experience it.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, if she's counting cars and doing all that, I'd like to see that done at the middle school as well as part of it, because I think that it'd be good to be able to present the whole, that picture. We've got some samples of the elementary, we've got the middle school sample, and then, let's start moving forward and trying to get parent buy-in, et cetera.
Yeah, I think if they could dedicate, a morning and an afternoon, they can get both schools done, in one day. And I myself, I every once in a while I end up taking lunch late, and I have to go right through that section when both of them are coming out and the buses are all lined up, and the buses don't seem to be the problem. They're orderly, they're in line. It's these SUVs, and I don't know who's driving them, but they're not happy. I can tell you that. And we were all like, you got on the bus or you didn't go to school. And maybe I'm showing my age here, but there are challenges. People want their kids to be able to sleep a little bit later, but at some point you can't change the rules all the time, because when they go to their jobs, and I know I have employees, and you, work starts at a certain time, and unfortunately, that changes. But there's a lot of layers there to be dealt with. Marge, did you have anything to add?
I avoid that area when the kids are getting out like you wouldn't believe. That's that's all I can really say about it. Yeah, that area's a mess, absolute mess.
And the only other comment too is that, we're wondering if there was an increase of people driving their students during COVID. And as things start to get back to normal, that hopefully we'll start to see people having their kids start to take the bus again. So I think it'd be interesting that's why I wanted to kind of throw that question in too, why do you drive your kids to school
Yeah.
or pick them up from school? Was it, I totally get it, during COVID, if you were afraid of exposure and all that, but now it's time to maybe try and get back to normal. But I still think there was a lot of driving before that anyway.
Yeah.
So, and I admit I was guilty myself all those years ago, definitely guilty, as charged. So
Yeah, I think it's people are trying to do the right things for their kids, and keep in mind that as a town we have responsibility to run the buses. And as a town meeting member, we hear it all the time. Why are we paying for these buses that are empty? Well, it's a right. You have a responsibility to get kids to school. So when you're dealing with people's kids, that's when people, will get emotional, and rightfully so. It's an important part of the components. We're dealing with the business community, we're dealing with seniors, and you're dealing with kids, and that's where the passion really comes out in the emotions. So, and it's good. Thank God for you people who get involved with the school systems. I mean, I might be showing my age here. My youngest is in grad school at
Hi.
Northeastern, so I'm past all the school buses and things, but it was the same problem. As they get older, it's not cool to be on the bus, and I understand it, but you got to realize that the taxes are funding this, and it's the way, if we can combine and get utilization out of the sources that we're paying for, it's better for all of us. Okay. Do we have any comments outside of the committee on this item?
So, hi guys, it's Eileen. So I'm just glad to see you're finally getting to it. It's been a while, and I think you'll get some good information and you'll look good. And speaking of that, and I have to go, but just quickly, Mr. Chair, Are you planning to present a report at town meeting in May? I mean, I know that you had thought maybe you were going to do it, when was it, in February or something?
Yeah. I think when we were talking about doing it in February, there were a lot of items on there that I was personally involved in. It took up a lot of time. We've got a report just to let them know that we're still doing it and to not let the people who would come before us think that it's fallen. So I will, yes, for May, we will plan to present. It'll be something short, letting them
Yeah.
know what we're talking about, that we're carrying the torch forward and it's still alive.
All right, good, Rick. And you summed it up perfectly just a minute ago about, it's the taxpayers' dollars and, yes, it's a right and kids have to, have a seat on the bus, but at the same time, make sure that we're spending the money wisely.
Right.
And the survey, I think, will go towards that. So thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Eileen.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else to say on Safe Routes to School?
Rick, just one more thing.
Sure.
The hold up, whether or not we become an alliance member, that's like the ultimate question, right? And when and if how?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there might be a lack of understanding on both sides. And don't let me speak for you here, Catherine. I think that Bob thinks we already are. We did the application. I don't know what that made us, if not an alliance partner. It just got us into the system. Judy did mention that we're 6 months into it or something. So I guess we joined the Safe Routes to School program, but are not necessarily an alliance partner. And I think when you become the alliance partner is when they offer all these other services, that they'll come in and, look at the routes and talk with the PTOs. So that's my understanding. But I told Catherine that I will give Catherine Judy's information and she can talk about it there. But I do think that alliance partnership, whatever we have to do to be there, we should, because I think it seems like that's what opens the door on their end. Maybe they have funding that's not available for just basic membership. You have to be an alliance partner. And I don't think there's anything except you signing saying you're going to be an alliance partner and you're not going to just be a fly-by-night organization. So that's where I was wondering where it would reside.
Okay. Catherine, feel free to include me or I can forward you. I talked to Judy pretty regularly. I talked to her yesterday, but it sounds like Bob has not responded to her and that's what she's waiting on. So if you've talked to Bob,
Well,
then
I
maybe-
did talk about, I don't know if you missed the first part of my talking, if you were still dialing in or not, but
No, I
did
heard
speak
you.
to
I just,
Bob.
he hasn't responded to her, right?
She hasn't sent him anything. So that we had the meeting back in June and we filled out the paperwork that was requested, the application. He and Martha attended 2 webinars. And
Okay.
then, as I had mentioned, this kind of got put on the back burner because we knew we couldn't do anything until September if we were going to apply for any funding or anything. And then, like I said, we were dealing with COVID and busing and shortage on drivers. And then, of course, all the stuff with MSBA and getting all that paperwork in time for both Fox Hill and for the high school. And so, we've just had a second to breathe. So the timing of, her presentation last week and then reviewing it in our meeting tonight is good. But, Bob said, absolutely, we can, do the surveys and we'll talk about it at the next school committee meeting. And I think we'll go ahead and move forward that. But the next question is, what's the next step, right? So as, you just said, Rick, I guess, is there a piece of paper we have to sign to say we're in the alliance? I mean, I just want to understand, let's present something properly to the school committee so that we know, okay, September is our goal to, get this finished, let's say. Here are the next 6 steps we need to do and accomplish by then. That way we can bring it up at each school committee meeting and try and hit those goals. And, we can all try and push that forward.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. My only comment is that Judy does claim that she's reached out to Bob multiple times in the past month and hasn't heard. So maybe she has the wrong email or something.
Yeah, I don't know. And actually, if you, like I said, if someone could give me her information, I will reach out to her on my own.
I know Bob has responded in the email chain we do have with Principal Harris at Memorial. So
Alright,
I
so
just
yeah,
checked. He
she has the
responded
right
6 days
email.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's got the right email.
Okay.
Yeah, so in her follow-up to me, and I will forward this to the entire committee, just so everyone knows where we're at. It looks like, she said, please consider taking the small steps as Safe Routes to School Alliance partner, and she has a link for it. So you can look at that and see what's involved. I really think it's just a commitment from the town that you're going to be an alliance partner, and which allows them, it frees up some of their team to do some of these items because they can't do it for non-alliance partners. That at least is my understanding. Good evening, Mr. Selectman, Select Person. Is that you as Jennifer Priest on the other side too?
No, that's her. She's piggybacking on my meetings now.
Hey, Jennifer, nice to see you tonight, or see your name. Mr. Selectman, did you have any comments regarding Safe Routes to School?
No, I have not caught up on the last meeting, and I am now coming in late to this one, so I have some homework to do before I start opening my big mouth. But I appreciate where the conversation's going.
Okay, good, thank you. For full disclosure, I had a text with Nick. He did have, Mr. Selectman, conflict with equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I had asked him if it was gonna, be a constant mix, a constant overlap, that we move this so we can have him as a regular here, because I think it's important that when the findings come out, we're not surprising the selectmen at all. And I think we will present to the selectmen to let them know what we're thinking as we go along. And we're probably going to have to schedule something for that shortly. I just promised Eileen Sickler that we would present to town meeting, just to give them an idea of where we're at, the things that we're looking at, and that the previous town meeting committee, all their efforts were not in vain, and that it is continuing to move forward. All right, so if we're done with Safe Routes to School, I think we had talked about, we've done a lot of things in the past few meetings, but it's a lot of information gathering, and we really haven't had a chance to reassess and digest some of it before we just go to the next thing. So I'd like to just kind of recover some of the things that we've discussed. The initial meeting that we had in March, we were talking about the seniors, and that the current system using go-go grand person, I don't want to say dad or ma,
They're calling themselves Go-Go Technologies now.
go-go technology, seemed to be the best fit at the time. It's one of those unique challenges. You've got different people that sometimes are going to the same place, might be late here, might be shopping, but it's different times, different starting spots, different ending spots. It's very difficult to come up with a solution. And I think we saw that the Beeline had that difficulty. So currently we looked at that as being probably the best solution as it stands right now. Is that the understanding of this committee? Anyone can just raise their
Crickets.
hand, nod your heads, anything.
So it's Go-Go Technologies, but it's also the LIFT program. So
Right.
it's both together. So Community Transportation Program.
And it's only go-go when they need the concierge service, right?
Correct.
Normally they can just do it themselves through the app.
We try very hard to put them onto LIFT because it's an extra 28 cents a minute for Go-Go.
Mm-hmm.
But again, do we feel like that is probably the best solution at this point to continue with that program?
Yeah, I think for seniors and those that are disabled and low income, I do. I think for for what's out there, I think it's the best solution.
In Marge, the funding mechanism is the surcharges on Lyft and Uber, and a grant.
Nick, can you address that a little more than I can? The grant's been gone for a while.
Sorry, Rick, what was the question?
The funding mechanism for the current system for the seniors, whether it be go-go technology or the Lyft subsidy program, how is that being funded?
Yeah, there was a grant, but there isn't anymore. I think that ran out,
Year ago.
yeah, last year, right? So
Mm.
right now, it's still. So we just went over this Monday, which is why I know. um, right now, it still exists under where the Beeline used to be. And so instead of the 120 that we were allocating toward it, right now it's $50,000 being allocated toward it, and then the additional funds that come back from it also go into it. I forget how much that was, Rick. I know John did.
Was it 12,000?
Was it 12,000?
I think so.
So 50,000 plus the 12,000 that it has generated, all kind of dumped back into it.
Okay, so funding is not a problem currently for that program.
Correct.
And I feel like the administration is pretty committed to funding it, even if it gets more expensive.
Okay,
Marge,
That's a-
are the fees that the seniors pay, do those also go into that same account? That they
No, it's just that goes straight to Lyft. So
that
they
goes
pay,
straight to Lyft?
their
Okay.
credit card is on the app and it goes right to
Okay.
the company.
but any Lyft or
Uber.
ride sharing app that is being taken from Burlington, there is a portion, I think it's 35 cents a ride, that gets funneled back to Burlington as for them being able to operate in the town. So that's part of the funding mechanism, is going directly to this program. I just want to make sure that we're not going to leave anything off the list here and find out, we solved a lot of problems and then we left a hole for someone else. So Marge, you think the administration will continue to fund this line item like it was for the B line?
Yeah, I
Okay,
do. I've been told to grow the program, so I think it's safe.
okay.
Yeah, it
Right,
feels like the
okay.
program fits that need of people who need to get from one specific place to another and might not have the contact or ride. Because I know we looked at the ride share stuff with Pogo, but that felt more like where there are groups of people trying to get somewhere. So it's definitely a different need than that. And I just want to call out, I don't think they cross over, and I don't think it crosses over with other things we've looked at because of that.
I have immigrants that use it, that go to Market Basket 4 in the morning, to work. So yeah, I mean, how else are they going to get there? I think they were probably walking before. It's opened up some possibilities for them working wise, in terms of, being able to do other hours that might make them more money.
Okay, so it's this committee's understanding that that program for the seniors is probably the best fit right now and for the immediate future. Great. Let's talk again about.
Can I ask
Pogo?
one question
Sure.
related to seniors? Marge, do you think that there are gaps that are still not being filled by Lyft, the ride, the COA van, MBTA?
Yeah, I mean, I think people who are really have trouble getting out of the house on their own is still an issue. Um, I think that medical appointments, if people are using our van and they have a medical appointment and they're not on the lift, um, or on the ride and they get out at 5 o'clock, how do they get home if their family's not around? There are definitely some gaps. Um, we had a woman today call that she has a bunch of broken bones and she has to get to Leahy for appointments, but she has a service dog. So legally, we have to get the service dog onto the van, but the driver can't touch the service dog. So how do you manage that? And that's we haven't had a lot of that, but it's a gap.
Do we have any suggestions on how to
I
fill
don't know
that
that
gap?
you can plug every gap. I don't know that
No, you
that's
can't.
possible. The people who need chair cars, they, what do you do with them? I mean, you're always going to have these gaps that you can't fill, and that probably don't happen often enough that you want to have that expense of having something ready. When we have, and I'm sure Melissa, you guys have it in Lexington, somebody who really basically needs an ambulance to get themselves to the doctors, and those ambulance trips are hugely expensive. And what do you do with that? That's not something we don't want to tie up EMS to take someone to the doctor, you know, even though many
Yeah.
people will call anyway for that, but what do you know, that's a lot of money. You don't, you know, I don't even know if you would regionally want to have an ambulance on, you know, if you get 4 or 5 towns together to have an ambulance, I don't even know if that makes sense.
Well, and they don't, most of them won't do those rides anymore. The private
Right.
ambulance, even private ambulance companies won't do the rides. I mean, local municipalities will do the carryouts when needed, but unless it's an emergency, they're not going to transport.
Right.
So,
We certainly have people that will call and say that call 911 and say we're having an emergency, just take me to Leahy. I don't know how they get home, but yeah, so I mean, there's definitely gaps we can't fill, and I don't know that they can be filled. I don't know that we want to worry about every gap we have.
No, I think there's no way to solve all the problems. We just wanted to make sure we didn't have any big holes that we didn't feel like we were addressing. I think it's important that we make sure that we cover, you know,
So
everything.
I think between community transportation and I think between the fact that we now have a, you know, a large bus and a small minivan, because we did have, that was a gap for us, people unable to get onto our minivan, I mean, onto our minibus. But now with the minivan, that's been filled. So I think we've covered a lot of it. Um, I don't know that we can cover more than that without a lot of expense.
Okay, any other comments regarding the seniors? Like I said, we're just gonna go over the items that we've discussed before so we can have some consensus. And one item we haven't discussed, there's gonna need to be a report from this committee at some point. And so we will be looking for people to contribute to that effort. I know we're all busy. All right, I've got, we're all busy, but at the same point, we got some big shoes to fill with the committee that came before us. That report was really well done. So I guess we'll leave that for discussion for another night, but it is coming at some point. Otherwise, we'll just go to the selectmen and say, here's the BCAT tapes. Figure it out. Nick knows everything. All right, let's talk again about POGO. And Jeremy, maybe you can summarize where we ended with it, just to refresh what we thought was going to be a fit and the problems that it's going to solve for us.
So where we ended is, you know, we met Melissa, we talked to her. She shared what they do, and then she kind of sent an updated set of slides that I sent out that just had a little more information that she had shared. She just wanted to make sure things were scrubbed so nothing proprietary would be shared, either on our call or in the document shared, just because it's public knowledge. And it, you know, my take is it has the potential to fill a need. Clearly, not all needs. It's not a solution for everything, but I think it helps any situation where you have groups of people trying to get from one place to another place or heading to a place. So maybe heading to practice for kids or leaving school. There's an opportunity just because it's a kind of universal platform for ride sharing. So I think there is some benefit to it. She tossed out some initial pricing and said this is just kind of without knowing much what she thinks, and I think further talking could happen. I also personally think that if we do want to add it into the portfolio of transportation options, that you know we may want to start with a pilot and run it somewhere. But I think there's also eventually potential to spread it beyond just schools to other areas where people are traveling. But I think some of that also overlaps some of the really neat ideas on having small bus routes that were hitting some, you know, really nice points in town between, you know, just trying to remember exactly where it was going. It was going up to like Mary Cummings and down to Leahy and into some of the business areas. So, you know, I think there's an overlap there, but you know, that's kind of where we left it. And that's kind of some of my impressions from it after seeing some of the other stuff too. So I think it's an option. Um, again, I don't think it solves everything. I think there's some overlap with the buses, and there's some unique things that separate it from, you know, the rideshare programs like Lyft, because I think it is a different need.
Right. Now, Catherine, we talked a little bit about this, you know, specifically at the high school, just to get the conversation started and maybe bringing in, you know, some high school students to help us kind of get some interest generated about it and get some things done. I'm just trying to make sure we're covering the things that we discussed, because it's easy to move on to the next one and forget what we were talking about. You know, we meet once a month, and I know everyone's busy, but I want to make sure that we don't get to the end and say, you know, well, what did we say on that one? It's been too long. So your thoughts on this system and being able to adapt it to, you know, the after school programs primarily for, you know, high school and maybe middle school kids.
Well, again, I think it's a great idea to try and present it or do some sort of a pilot program with either the middle school or the high school. It goes back to trying to get a question to the answer. Why are you picking your students up? And you know, why there could be, you know, say 3 cars instead of, you know, 10 cars, because the parents can carpool using the Pogo app. So we can help cut back that traffic. So, I mean, I think it's great. I need to talk to see if I can, I don't know if there's a way to survey the students, you know, I don't know if there's a way to pass a survey out, or someone had, you know, we can figure out a survey. Everyone's so surveyed out, you know, but,
Yeah.
you know, talk to the student representative, Brooke, and get her take on it. It's just, last couple of meeting, I missed a meeting and she missed a meeting, so I haven't talked to her the last 2 meetings, but I'll try and, catch her after this meeting next week and just
Okay.
get a feeling from her, um, and see if we can get an idea.
Yeah. One of the things, and this is just from my standpoint, when I heard that there were kids not involved in any after school programs because they didn't have transportation, it was just out of their reach. That's really a sad situation for this town. We've got
And
such great recreation programs, after schools, clubs, sports. To not be a part of that, you're missing. You're only getting half of the deal, and that's really not fair, and it shouldn't be that way in this town.
I did ask her to try and get me that information from her predecessor after we had a meeting several meetings ago. She actually showed up live like 3 meetings ago, I think. And again, we just haven't seen each other since then. So
Okay.
just I'll have to get a tickler back out to her to see if I can get those statistics. But yeah, I agree with you. It's sad that kids feel they can't participate in after school programs and activities because they don't have a ride.
Right. But I've also seen where that becomes, you know, an urban legend, and there's only one kid, and it would have been easy to buy the kid a car and give him a chauffeur than start a whole system for a problem that maybe didn't exist. But if that in fact does exist, I'm passionate about making sure that we have some solution for that. So, yeah, so
Catherine, can that become part of the survey for Safe Routes to School?
I'm not sure. Well, it's this that's she's high school level, so the survey only goes out up to 8th grade.
right.
So
So
Yeah, I think this would be something that, you know, kind of be high school. I think some middle school will have this issue, but this really is more of an impact, I think, it would be at the high school level, where, you know, then we're not going to capture it through any other survey. So, yeah, if you could just follow up with her and just start the discussion, then we can talk about if there needs to be any other efforts from this committee to support that. You know, I think we're happy to do it. I know personally I would be happy to help
okay, thanks.
if I can there. Nick, you were supposed to make sure I didn't volunteer for anything else. That was your role
Fail.
here.
I can't
Um,
succeed in everything, Rick. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The other
oh,
item
can I comment?
that excuse me?
Can I make a comment quick?
Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa. I didn't see your hands.
It's okay. Once you raise it, it gets really small. I think I would love to explore. So I like the idea. It just seems very expensive for something that didn't necessarily guarantee a ride. I get that it was like the algorithm and things like that. But in the back of my mind, I was like, could we do a Google Doc and people like put in there where they're going and like maybe you won't get a match, maybe like, or this could be a job for like a computer science class at the high school. It just felt like I would be more likely to be like, hey, Facebook, is anybody going to pick up at 3 on Tuesdays? It for the amount of money, like you said, that this seemed like it was very expensive. It's more than the lift, right? Like, so I would love to just, I don't mind piloting or whatever if that's free, but this seemed like a lot of money for what, in my opinion, felt like people could do for a lot less money, maybe not as sophisticated, but a little bit more reasonable.
I think that's part of, I mean, why we I think, started to reach out to Apogo, because we were trying to figure out how to connect parents and, to other parents. And I think part of it is, you know, when you're new to town, you don't know anyone. So it's, you maybe don't know that there's a Facebook group, I think we're willing to, I am willing to explore anything. Maybe you start a transportation Facebook group and, call it the carpool group or something. I don't even know if we talked about that early on. But just any way to connect people, because again, I think that the students are afraid to talk to other students, and then once they get into that first ride, or maybe, how do you connect them? That's the biggest problem, is figuring out how to connect people who don't know people, because
Yeah,
it's hard when you're
we'd
not
have
from
to
here.
somehow make it somewhat official, like not, I think Facebook is probably not ideal, right? But like if the school somehow maintained a Google Doc, right? And each activity had a tab, or each sports team had a tab. And it would have to be, like you said, publicized. And I think once you reach a critical mass and somebody's like, oh, I got a ride from the Google Doc, you know what I mean? Like then you would get it moving. And I'm sure um, I think the creative minds could do a lot of work on this. I think even if we spent some money, it just was like 85,000 seemed like a little too far.
I agree, it's a lot of money. That's all.
Yeah, it's certainly a system that's incorporated a lot of things that you may or may not utilize. The
Yeah.
one the one thing that did stand out, though, it was the parental sign in to, yes, that person's in that group and I don't mind them driving my kid, rather than having a 16-year-old say, yeah, I'm going to take a ride with Billy, and Billy doesn't really have the authority to be driving anyone other than his family at that point. And then they go back to the school and said, hey, you did a Google Doc, ran my kid with this kid that shouldn't have been driving. I don't know. It's just, I'm not
I
advocating
don't
for the
even know if the
expensive
app would
system.
really control for that.
Well, I think it allowed you to only take rides with those that were in that approved group.
Yep.
If
Also,
Yeah,
Google does let you, like the school Google accounts are also secure. Like,
It's not secured. It was more like a, I don't want to say a background check,
yeah,
but you had a way of meeting that parent, and so you felt comfortable with that parent driving your child, and you'd had this group of circle of people that you felt comfortable with. They weren't just getting a ride with anybody who was, you know,
and
sweeping by.
there was that ability through, I can't remember the Checker. Checker was
Yes.
the name of the service,
Yeah.
and you could do a Corey background check and get a badge on your profile. So I think there are some little things that were very nice about it. I think they may be solvable other ways. Melissa, to your point, it's not cheap, um, or at least what was presented to us was not
Right.
cheap. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what we would go with, or that that's what they would come back with. I think it's to your point, worth noting, what can we do on our own, and what can we do with little lift and little cost, and then compare it to what they offer and come back to them.
And I think it was a liability. We were trying to find out how we do that so that the school's not liable. Because when you start posting things on the school website and then there's an accident on the road, then how do we keep the school from being sued? So, I mean, that, when you're using an outside company, they have their own insurance. Um, and I believe Melissa brought that up too there, and they have some sort of insurance coverage as well. So and again, I just, whatever we can come up with is creative. I just, I agree with Rick. I mean, I hate the fact that there were, we heard there were students at a high school level who were not participating in after school, clubs and whatnot because they couldn't get a ride. It's sad.
Super sad.
and
Uh,
go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I love where this conversation is at right now. I think that because of the multifaceted nature of transportation and the fact that we're going to be offering or asking, the board and the town to consider multiple solutions. Sorry, one second, my dog's trying to eat something. Yeah. My dog's like burrowing through my trash right now. We're going to have multiple solutions on our hands. I know that through the town clerk's office, we have a new residence guide. And I think that, if we push notifications and information to new residents, right, that these services are available from a municipality standpoint, it'll hopefully help us to educate the residents about what exists and what is available to them, right? Whether it be to them or their kids or however it's going to kind of flesh out. So I think a big piece of this, you know, solve is the communications piece of it, right? Is how once these 2 or 3 or 4 things are up and running, how people how people are going to know about them to use them. So that's something that we shall keep in the back of our heads too. Is that you know whatever we decide on is going to have to be properly told. Otherwise, no one's going to know it's out there, and people are going to go, "Well, I'm just going to keep driving," and we'll sit there and go, "Oh, well, we've got this service that will cut the cars around the school in half, and no one's using it." I mean, I went down to the high school a week or two ago to do an evaluation for senior civics projects, and one of the kids, his project was a documentary around how he could make the high school student parking lot better. Right? He's like, the traffic is atrocious, and I understand this is like a first world problem that we're tackling here, right? But he sat down with one of the town's civil engineers to say, is there a better way to do this? And my first thought was, yeah, stop driving to school and take the bus. But the fact that like the kids are experiencing these pressure points, there are definitely ways where we can get cars off the road and be doing better. So
I feel like I got to call Rent-A-Kid and get a kid in my picture here.
you can borrow one of mine, Rick. Anytime.
Yeah, I've heard that. You got to take them
Rent-
back though, Nick. That's the problem.
Rent a firefighter.
All right, so I do want to bring it back to initially when we first started, Melissa had created a great spreadsheet, and that's going to be the goal, is to plug these things back into the spreadsheet, come up with some type of cost, some priority system, our recommendations, and that's how this will eventually come to fruition. So having these discussions just to keep reminding ourselves what we've talked about, where we see the real needs and what we see as priorities is important. The next item that we talked about, and I talked about this last meeting, was for some type of transportation to run, during the day to get people around. We talked about, these life science companies that are coming in, and I've had discussions offline with people who still think that it's going to be one car, one person coming back in, and the traffic getting is going to come back. I will assure you, it will not be one car, one person with the next wave of workers coming into the town, especially those that may be relocating from Cambridge. Vericel, who is in Cambridge, coming to Network Drive. Their people are in Cambridge now, and if you work in Cambridge, chances are you're not driving a car. The price to park your car for a day in Cambridge is prohibitive. So we do know that there is going to be a need for some type of transportation to run around the town to connect where businesses are and where the amenities are. One of the great things about Burlington is the amenities have grown as the businesses have grown, and that's what attracts the next wave of businesses to come here. However, if they're on Network Drive, or if they're Burlington Woods, or if they're Corporate Drive, you're not going to be walking from those locations to the amenities. So we really have got to think about a way to keep the business community viable. Forget the cost here for a moment. The cost is always an issue because there will be who will be paying for it. I do think there's opportunities with Mass DOT, and there's a community transit grant program I'm actually going to on Thursday, the 21st, to learn about it. And I'll share this information with anyone that wants to go to that training as well. you have to find out what the needs are, and then what the costs are, and then who's going to pay for it. And we haven't really done a great job taking advantage of all the grants that are available to our community. And I think certainly with Melissa Tentakoulis in the Economic Development Office, she's changed that. I think she's still the only department in town that is running at a surplus. She brings more money in grants than it costs to fund the department, and would love to see it stay that way. So for those that weren't here last meeting, we talked about running a loop. Primarily, let's just say the starting point was at the Marriott. Let's just use that as a reference point. It would run down the Mall Road. It would take a right on, I think it's Meadow something, between Kohl's and the other shopping center there. And that would avoid that light, which really is, it stops everyone from turning there. It would go down Middlesex Turnpike and take a left onto 4th Ave, like where Lifetime is, and there's going to be housing there. Then it would take a left and it would run down past Wegmans on 2nd Ave. It would run all the way down to past the cinema, take a left and come out at the lights there at the mall. Take a right, head down Middlesex Turnpike, and you can pick up people at the Summit, which is, where Millipore is. And then you take a left onto Blanchard. And this is where it really is critical. Right now, Blanchard Road, for the businesses are there, it's an island. They're in Burlington, but they not only can't see any amenities, they can't get to them from there. And I've talked with a lot of the companies, Azure Clean Rooms on Demand. That's where the old Datacon building used to be. They currently are occupied about 3/4 by Moderna, but there's other, early stage life science companies that are in there. When they get there and they're carpooling and getting there, they don't dare go out to lunch because they're going to lose the parking spot if they had it. And so they are just dying to have something that will get them somewhere. So it would run up Blanchard Road, past Mary Cummings, that anyone who doesn't work on Blanchard Road can never get to Mary Cummings. You just can't, time-wise, you couldn't get there. The parking is very limited. It would take a left onto South Bedford, which would connect it to Vandergraff. It would be a stop there at Vandergraff and Wayside. And it would go towards Burlington Woods and hang a right. It's not going to go all the way to the Mall Road. It's going to go through Burlington Woods and go through the back into the Marriott. So that's really the loop. Now that loop is 5 miles. It's 20-something minutes without stops. So you need multiple vehicles, and you probably need them going in both directions. Because we talked about this before. If you were at the Summit and you wanted to go to Mary Cummings Park, you don't want to have to go all the way back around to get back to the Summit. And I do think Blanchard Road, as we get companies in here and they start building out the sidewalks, and the water problems will be a thing of the past, and people will be able to walk. But people need to be able to get to the amenities and get back within a reasonable time without getting in their car. And so we've talked about this. I think there was a lot of agreement for this committee that's a good idea. And then we can talk about how we get residents. The next thing is, if you've got something running, then it's just getting people attached to that system. How do they get there? If a senior had to go to Leahy, they go to Leahy. Well, now that you're in that area, you can get around anywhere, do all your other business, while you're there, and then figure out how to get back off of that hub and get to where you're going to go. But you've got to start somewhere. And I do think that, there'll have to be some type of seed money through a grant to get it going. But I certainly know that I will be working hard to demonstrate the needs to the business community, that, property managers, this is going to be part of doing business. You're going to have to provide this service to your employees, or else your employees are going to want to go back to Cambridge. And the last thing we want is a company like Vericel that decided to relocate here for all the amenities we have and the great opportunities, and to find out that their employees weren't on board. They thought they were, but they got here, and 6 months later, they're back working for a competitor in Kendall Square. So the good part of all of this is, as we head into life sciences, we're going to fill empty buildings. The property values stay up high, the commercial tax base stays high, and it feeds all of what we're talking about. You know, the school system, the seniors, all of it. And we know that we're very dependent on the commercial sector, but we want the commercial sector to understand there are some changes that are going to happen, and transportation is absolutely one of them. And I'll be honest, that was one of my main focuses for being involved in this, just to be able to weigh in on what we see outside of the municipality itself and the need to be able to support those programs that support us, those businesses that support us. So as I mentioned, Mass DOT, this community transit grant program, in order to be able to apply for it, this training is mandatory. I also shared this with Melissa Tintakoulis, and I'll talk with her about it to see if this is something we can possibly be eligible for. And who knows, if we could get, you know, this thing up and running on some federal and state money, then we have a good idea about what we can get for ridership. We have a good idea of the costs, and then we just figure out how we're going to pay for it. But I do think it's going to be one of those things that's going to be critical to keep Burlington, and especially the amenities. The amenities, I will assure you, many of them are hanging by a thread. They were all hanging on for when COVID goes away and the office buildings fill up again and we act like nothing ever happened. I'll assure you that the office buildings will never fill up to the level they were pre-COVID with those same companies. It's just not feasible for the tech sector. They'd like them to come back, but the truth of the matter is many of the employees are now working remote in other states, still working for the same employer, just enjoying their toes in the sand while they're doing it. I do have a certain amount of envy there, but my job makes me stay here in Burlington, and I love being in Burlington. So if there's any other discussion we want to have on that for those that might not have heard it or those who didn't get a chance to weigh in on it, I'd love to be able to talk about that. Go ahead, Nick.
So yeah, I'm totally on board with pilot testing with someone else's money. Uh, I just come across an organization called VIA that helps communities find federal and state funding for things just like this. So we should talk more about that after I do some more homework. But to kind of further your point, Rick. You're right, right? Like I just accepted a full-time position to be remote for a company that used to be based out of Ohio that is now virtual first. They'll never hire an in-person person again. So like companies are doing it. Companies are embracing hybrid because we've all, tasted the fruit, so to speak. And why do I have to go to work 5 days a week if I don't have to? Um, so to that point, if the pilot test goes well, I think that the next logical extension of that is into the residential sector of town, because even though we've got cars, um, we're here, right? I should say we're here. More people are apt to be here working from home. And if we can get out of our houses to an area, leave our car behind, or maybe our car's in the shop, or maybe we want to be a one car family and our spouse goes to work with the actual car, leaving us stranded on our island. There could be an opportunity to get residents re-engaged into the community on the business daylight hours, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, and I think going back to the very first meeting that we had when I had mapped out where the multifamily units are, because there's many, there's not always one car per person in a multifamily. Those tend to be the places where you would start, because if you go all the way, now you're getting back to the same problem that the seniors have. Everyone lives in a different place and wants to get to a different place. They want to go to a shared spot, but they're picking them up in all different spots. So I think the logical thing would be to say, yeah, when we do then try to tie it into the residential side, you tie it in areas that people could either park and get this thing, or multifamily stops, and then you'd have to get to the closest place you could from your house. But I do think that's a secondary thing. It's going to be part of the final results. But yeah, we've got to start somewhere. I know as soon as we get it going, every business that's not on that route will want to be included, and there's going to be a cost. There's going to be a cost for businesses. I think, eventually, I did talk to Nordblum. I said, we'll name it the Nordblum trolley if we have to. We'll run it from Network Drive. And so we've got to be inventive because it's a different workforce. And and I want to say this, it's a very positive step for us. People who are in life sciences didn't get into it strictly for the money. And that's not always true with a lot of the other industries. And those other industries are very competitive, and it's always, us versus them. Life sciences, while the final product, the final recipe for that pharmaceutical is very treasured, the technology and innovation that it takes to produce, the genomes or whatever, they're very collaborative on that. And, we're working to form a life science council in town to have that collaboration. So people, they just want to work together. They want to go and see Mary Cummings Park. They want to go to the mall. They want to go to the restaurants. They want to be part of the community. Jeremy, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just think it's very important because a lot of the time that municipalities and companies make investment, they want to see that connection to benefit. And it may be that we have to be comparative to communities around us and saying that not only do we have the buildings and the amenities, but we have access to them. Because you see investments in other towns where they are trying to redevelop old malls and do other things to make it more of a destination. So I think it's a differentiator that we have to call upon that really shows that you know, this investment with our differentiators brings the secondary of keeping our tax base flowing. And we have to make sure we keep that in mind, I think, as we speak and share what we're putting together with others. And we've got to do that for all of these, because I know, some of it's just to support people in their life, some of it is to add access to things, and others to keep our town relevant and humming the way it is. And I just think we got to make sure that we logically tie all that together the entire time. And my personal background says I would lead with that, and then talk about these are the things we want to do. These are the benefits. Here's how we're going to get there. Because I know the paper we saw before was more. It was like it was a research paper. It was here's everything that's going on. Here's the answer. Where we may want to come in the other way. Here's the answer. Here's why. So
No,
I just
I,
wanted to
I
tie all
couldn't
that
agree.
together. Some
I couldn't
thoughts.
agree more, Jeremy. You're absolutely right. I will say the town and the current administration understand the dynamics of all of this. Um, when I first got involved with the business community, it was really an us versus them. The residents, those bad developers, and the developers were like the crazy townies. It's come a long way. I think we understand as residents, our tax rate is comparatively low to many places with the amenities and services beyond what most people can ever dream of. And we understand where it comes from now. And this converting over to life sciences did not happen overnight. It was a real struggle to get, some zoning, get some understanding that the office, there's no good empty office park. It just, you're looking for tax abatements. You don't have the employees here spending their money. You don't have the corporate cards. It was a lot of work. It was collaborative work done with the planning department, economic development, selectman's office, the administration. It, I think we get it. I think we're better than ever. We're figuring out what we are as Burlington. We didn't always understand that. Catherine, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, no, and I was going to agree with that. That I think too the whole COVID situation also enlightened a lot of people in terms of we do have to shift to something else like the life sciences because we can't depend on restaurants. What if there's another COVID? Can we depend on malls because people are shopping online? So I think people are starting to realize that we need to shift. And as you said, we have to offer the amenities to keep people here, those businesses here, because we want to keep them here for the reasons you mentioned. Keeps our tax rate low, et cetera. So again, thank you. And I did get a chance to, when I looked at your, the presentation that I missed last time, I did go through and you did a great job putting those maps together. I was very impressed.
No, when you've been around, and I've lived in town all my life, and there was a time when you're saying, hey, where's the town going? I think everyone would love to have a town like Carlisle, but have all the amenities of Burlington and the tax rate of Burlington. It's just not feasible. So while we have all these amenities and restaurants that we can go to, they're here because of the daytime population. They can't live off of us. We really kind of piggyback on that daytime population. So getting that population back is critical to keeping them existing. And, the costs, a lot of times people see the costs that get put onto businesses as, yeah, they should pay it. I will assure you that the property managers, any costs that go on get passed on to the tenants. And, a lot of times those tenants are small business owners, and it's tough to be a small business owner. So we try to make sure that we have everyone playing together right. I do want to, I don't want to go too late tonight. In some of the research that I've done leading up to this committee, there was a Tri-Town Efficiency and Regionalization Transit Study done in 2019 between Lexington, Bedford, and Burlington. 211 pages. I don't know how many recommendations. Then we had the Master Plan Steering Committee that came out with 12 pages of recommendations on transportation. I want to make sure that the results of this committee do not end up on paper that nobody references. I mean, we've done studies upon studies, and I think we've got enough data to make some recommendations going forward. And, I do appreciate that the selectmen are here and understand that, we're working on this to come up with recommendations. But I think in a future meeting, we're going to look at some of these recommendations to see if they still apply, because there's some great work that's been done before us, not only from the committee just before us, but through this regionalization. And I know we're not operating in a vacuum. We know that, Bedford and Lexington and Billerica would love to be able to get to our amenities. So there may be times when we see the grant might not be, we might not be able to be eligible for it by ourselves. And I know, Melissa, you have some experience in Lexington with some of this. I want to make sure that the solution doesn't fall, beyond us because of a town boundary. And we can discuss this, at a future meeting. But as I read through a lot of this, I said, wow, that was a lot of work. And I can imagine, someone was paid for some of these outside studies, but the Master Plan Steering Committee, I know I sat in there for 3 years and saw recommendations. I want to make sure that we've got a focus to present to the selectmen for their approval. So I want to keep bringing that up so that the last meeting, Nick doesn't say, no, we never said that. Holding you to it, Nick. All right, any other items that anyone would like to discuss tonight?
I actually had a question and a suggestion. If the group is interested, I could ask the transportation manager in Lexington to join us at the next meeting to talk about the regionalization plan that she's working on with 128 Business Council, and what potential opportunities there could be or invitations there may be from that could serve Burlington, if that would be of interest.
I know it's certainly of interest to me.
Yeah, I think we should invite her.
Marge has talked to her, I'm sure, a bit.
Yeah. Quite a bit.
Yeah, and our own Melissa Tentakula sits on the board of the 128 Business Council. So she's knowledgeable as well. And having come from Lexington, I think there's a lot of overlap from knowledge. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll see if she's available for that May meeting.
Okay. Any other items anyone would like to discuss? Any other motions anyone would like to make?
Would you like me to make a motion to adjourn, Rick?
I hear a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye. It's unanimous. Thank you all, folks. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go out and
Thank
vote
you.
on Saturday.